Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, along with other world leaders, is attending the G7 summit in Japan. But that wasn't the case yesterday. Ahead of the talks, he took a day off to celebrate his 11th wedding anniversary with his wife, Sophie. And that sparked a debate around work-life balance and whether or not taking a day off for his relationship was the right thing to do. Joining us now to weigh in on this conversation is Dr. Scott Sheeman, a sociologist at the University of Toronto. Scott, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
All right, well, first off, what do you make of the way that people are reacting to our Prime Minister taking a day off?
You know, it's really remarkable because I think he's just a human being like everyone else. And I think most people would accept the idea that a day off, maybe a couple days every now and then, is really a good thing for our health and well-being. And so it's remarkable that it is causing such a reaction. Yeah,
it is. And there are others that say that, you know, Trudeau is doing this deliberately to spark a debate or a conversation about work-life balance.
Well, it's certainly interesting because the idea has been around for a while, and it's increased, I think, in the culture in terms of our awareness of the need for work-life fit, taking time off to recover and recharge from work. So it's fascinating that simply by saying the words, people seem to be, I mean, in a way it's become political, and it's an idea that really just is about taking a break and disengaging from work demands so that when you come back to it, you're refreshed and recharged, but also to maintain your relationships outside of work is really a positive thing for health and well-being. So yeah, it's a fascinating cultural moment, I think.
It is. And what do you think it tells us about Canadian society and I guess our so-called value for a downtime or for things outside of work?
Well, I think the fact that it's become part of the discussion so rapidly, I think it's probably tapping into something that people recognize that they need. And I think the notion of balance, when people say work-life balance, I guess what's implied there is that you can also be off balance. And when you're off balance, you might not be functioning as well as you could be. You might not be as productive. It might affect your morale at work. And when you're off balance, your relationships with the people that matter to you or the parts of your life that aren't work-related might also suffer. So, for example, in some of our research, people say that, well, they sacrifice things like leisure time or time with friends or even going to the gym because they're working so hard. And there's a recognition in that statement that something's off balance, something's just not quite right. And so I think it requires us to check priorities and see what's important to us. Work is obviously critical, but so are the other things in our life.
Yeah, now this is, as you said, this is something that you've been researching and looking into as a sociologist. And what would you say, or what does your research show about, you know, the proper balance? I guess, is there a proper balance or maybe a ratio that you should be thinking about?
You know, it's really tricky because there's no one size fits all in this. What you end up hear people talking about is rather than balance, they talk about the importance of fit. So work fitting with other parts of their life. So if they have young children or children need to be picked up at school, say around 3, first of all, who's taking care of that? And does work allow for that kind of flexibility? Same thing with aging parents or any kinds of other needs that people have. How does work accommodate or fit in with those other needs? And so in a way, if the fit is there, then I think people feel a sense of balance. And, you know, ultimately, I think why it resonates so much is because organizations, human resource professionals and others recognize that if you want a productive, happy workforce, it's important that what's going on outside of work is also good for individuals and that they feel good about their non-working life.
How do you think Canadians as a whole or Canadian work life compares to that of other countries? I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Europe and there's a lot more vacation time for people.
You know, I think that it's really difficult because it depends on the comparison point. I think people have a sense that maybe Europe, certain European countries, there's more time that's not work related. And of course, organizations can cut back on things like whether emails are allowed outside of regular work hours, whatever those are. But I think, you know, I think my answer would be more a particular percentage of Canadians, roughly between 30 and 40%, do tell us in our surveys and our research that they do struggle with competing demands between work and non-work life. Often family-related demands are interfering or competing with work-related demands. And I think that's somewhat high. That probably falls somewhere between the U.S., which often seems the highest on some of these indicators, and some other European countries. But, you know, Asian comparisons are also just coming in more recent research. So I think the word is still out. But what I would say is quite a few Canadians do seem to be struggling, or at least expressing some stress that's associated with trying to find a fit between work and the rest of their lives, especially if they're working long hours. That's really one of the key factors. The longer hours really do take a toll.
Yeah, and as I said at the beginning, you know, many are wondering if the Prime Minister is really just trying to spark a debate here, maybe talk about a larger issue, maybe lead by example. I mean, politicians probably work ridiculous hours, right? They don't have 9-to-5 jobs. They're kind of working all the time. And I understand that there is a House of Commons committee right now studying into ways to improve the work-life balance for members of Parliament, possibly even taking Fridays off. I mean, how do you think Canadians might react to that? I mean, just think of the way that they've reacted to the Prime Minister taking one day off.
Well, you know, it speaks to questions of quality of life. And I think there are only so many hours in a day. There's only so much energy and attention that people can devote to the key roles in their life. And so even if this sparks a debate about how the arrangements of work with the other parts of our life are affecting our overall quality of life, our happiness, our capacity to sleep well, our relationships with other people, even the capacity to have time to volunteer or do things that maybe are also important for the well-being of society. I think this is a healthy discussion. I think it is good to keep in mind that one of the key things that really takes away from a sense of balance is excessive demands or overload. And so I think that part of the conversation can really address particular practices in workplaces, workplace cultures that have expectations about long hours or too many demands and not enough time to do it. So I think in the end, I think there is a craving. Obviously, the reaction to this, it really has surprised me. The reaction to this does seem to suggest that it's tapping into something, although part of this seems political as well.
Possibly. All right. But yeah, certainly, like you said, a conversation across the country being had right now. That is Dr. Scott Sheeman, a sociologist at the University of Toronto, joining us today via Skype. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.